Hello, everyone. Welcome to Microdesk's BIM 360 Workflow Series. My name is Jasenia. I am the event coordinator here at Microdesk. And today's session is session 5. We're going to be focusing on BIM 360 build. Just before we get started, just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, not in the chat panel. Also, a recorded version of this webinar will be available on our website and YouTube channel within a couple days. So you're going to get an email once that link is ready. And before we jump into the webinar, I just want to introduce Microdesk to you all. All right. Microdesk was founded in 1994 as an Autodesk reseller with a simple mission to assist architecture, engineering, construction, owners, and GIS firms with improving workflows and integrating project delivery technologies. 25 years later, that mission still holds true. Microdesk is a well-established AECO consulting firm with 13 offices in the US and UK. We have over 230 AECO consultants, solution specialists, software developers, and more that can help in all sectors, all disciplines, and at all stages. So some of the hottest topics in the AECO world, which I'm sure you've all heard, are globalization, urbanization, and sustainability. Urbanization studies suggest that the US alone will build 114 cities the size of Boston in the next 30 years. Here at Microdesk, we can help to make sure you're prepared to meet those demands. We use software from industry leaders and combine it with our vision and passion for sustainability to meet the demands of urbanization. Our team of industry expert consultants are redefining project delivery and asset management. We're committed to helping clients realize the business benefits of BIM quickly and economically by facilitating the use of innovative technologies and processes. Whether it's streamlining your design, construction, or operations, our consulting team is some of the largest and most experienced group of AECO technology consulting professionals. And to help support the industry with these demands of urbanization and globalization, we provide full service consulting. This includes BIM and CIM content development, technology assessment, CIO advisory, and much, much more. We also partner with world leaders such as Autodesk and BIM to utilize innovative technologies and methodologies to empower sustainable design and overcome local challenges. Our vision is to reduce the environmental impact of urbanization by helping the AECO industry to design, construct, and operate better projects more efficiently. So now I'm going to hand it off to Peter, and he'll jump you through today's webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jasenia. So my name is Peter Marchese. I'm the Senior Technology Evangelist at Microdesk. My background is in architecture. I worked as an architect for about 10 years, and I've been with Microdesk coming up on 15 years now. So I focus a lot on the emerging technologies. I administer and manage a lot of our cloud services like the BIM 360 and the other components in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And I've been working with Revit since 6.1. So I like to play around with all those tools and make sure they actually work and go through those, kind of like what we're going to be doing today. So today's agenda is we're going to be going over just a little bit about the webinar series, but we're going to be focusing on the build platform. So that specific package of BIM 360. We're going to go over what the components are, what they do, how to set it up, and what kinds of customization and methods of sort of templating out your project is. Now, before we get rolling with this, though, I always like to just ask a couple of quick questions, get an idea of who we're talking to. So first poll is just going to be asking people what their role is. And don't worry, these are quick. All righty. Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. Good mix. Then, are you already using BIM 360? Again, good mix across all answers. So for everybody who is not currently using it, or maybe in the past but isn't caught up, there's been a lot of updates. So hopefully some of the things that we go over today will be beneficial and new to you. And outside of BIM 360, are you using any cloud services or mobile tools? So if you're out in the field, access to documentation, drawings, tools to help coordinate with everybody back in the office or in other locations? Yeah, the majority in the yes. These days, I can expect that. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time with that. Cool. So let's get rolling. Now, what we're doing with this workflow series is rather than doing demos where we focus on one product and just do a lot of picks and clicks, we're going through the different processes and components of BIM 360 and how you can actually set it up for more or less of a project startup. So we've gone through the basic setup of the BIM 360 hub, the project setup, BIM 360 design, coordinate. Today we're going to be focusing on the build platform. The next two sessions are going to be focusing on the mobile applications, both iOS and Android, and also BIM 360 for operations and how that can be taken advantage. Again, today we're going to be focusing on the build platform. Now, for the people who haven't been using BIM 360 or aren't that familiar with it, BIM 360 is a cloud platform for construction coordination, handover operations. It kind of covers soup to nuts, and it's not any one specific application. The document management service can hold content from just about any program. The BIM 360 design service, for example, works with Civil 3D, Revit, Plant 3D. So it has a lot of different components that work with a lot of different tools. And as we're going to see today, specifically in the build application, it touches on a lot of different aspects of your project. It enables you to get a lot more insight into what's going on and tracking and helping for your management. Now, in terms of the packages, so within BIM 360, you have four major packages, and then you have the BIM 360 Ops component. Today, we're going to be focusing on the build platform. Now, of the four here, build is the only one that actually has an additional add-on that you can purchase. So you get the classic product of BIM 360 Field. So you have the field management component, the project management, asset management, which was just recently added, I believe 2 weeks ago. Then you also have the cost management add-on. Now, with these components that are inside of BIM 360 Build, it might look like you get like 3 or 4 pieces. So when you're talking about BIM 360 Design, the main component in there is the design service where I can create my packages and control that. Unlike that, though, in the build package, when you look at the different components, a lot of these have subcomponents or multiple things that are included inside of them. For example, in the field management, that includes the ability to create templates for our checklists. We can create more different, a little bit more work with our issues, and we also have the ability to do daily logs. So if I'm trying to do reporting from out in the field, what was the weather like? How many people were on site? What happened? Do I need to capture photos? For my project management, that has different components for handling my RFIs, my submittal data, as well as meeting minutes. The asset management that just came out, that allows me for asset tracking. Insight, project controls, gives me more data into what's happening from a standpoint of like quality, safety, have my reporting components in there. I also have some machine learning algorithms that I can take advantage of with Construction IQ, which gives me more information as to how are my projects going. So am I concerned that some might be at risk? And then I also have a tool called the Data Connector, which is in preview. So if you currently use tools like Power BI, for example, that allows me to take the data that's inside of BIM 360 and bring it into that. And then on the cost management, I have the cost management component. Now, the interesting thing with this is you've got all these different aspects of BIM 360 Build. You have all these different subcomponents and the way that you can set them up. And when you look at it this way, the asset and the cost management, even though they're the most recent tools, they only have one thing under them. And it might seem like there's not a lot to them, but there's in some cases almost more to working with and setting up those components than the rest. Now, these are the different components and parts of BIM 360 Build for all the next-gen services. So I'm not going to be talking about the classic field today. Now, when we're talking about working with this, we have multiple locations where we can do our setup. So unlike most of the other tools where if I want to create customization, if I want to set up my project, it's all done under Project Admin. For the build components, I have a couple of pieces that are done at the overall account level. I have a lot of content, like normal that you would expect, at the Project Admin level. There's also a setup that I can do inside of the project. And there's different methods of sort of templating out my data. So if I have one project that I want to take and redo some of the setup, I can bring that over there. But it's not like when we would do the document management and I choose an existing project that I want to pull from. So it's a little bit different. So those are some of the things that can tend to throw somebody off when they're getting used to build for the first time. So we're going to be going over all of this. Yeah, so first things first, let's actually hop into BIM 360. There we go. So what we're looking at is the project administration component of the project that I've been using throughout the webinar series. So at the moment, I've got my design collaboration, I've got my model coordination turned on, but what I want to do is actually start using my BIM 360 build components in this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through and activate the different tools. So we've got our field management. I'm going to activate my cost management, project management, and my assets. Now, you'll notice BIM 360 field down here. Again, field is the classic component. I'm not going to be worrying about that right now. So I've just turned all of these on. Again, if you haven't been looking at the project admin component of BIM 360 for a while, you'll notice it's actually a little bit different. So it has these boxes now, and I also do have the ability to deactivate these, which is something new. So I'm going to go to members and give myself access to these newly activated tools. Okay. So now that they're active and I've granted myself access, I can go back to services, and I'm going to be able to actually see what I can work with. So now you'll notice that I have those components over here on the left-hand side. So at the project admin level of control, what I can actually do is start going through here, and I'll take a look at my field management. And what I'm going to notice is that I'm looking at my field management, and there's not a lot of stuff in here. It's relatively simple. It's user-friendly. All I'm really looking at here is my permissions. So who do I want to give access to be able to create checklists? Who do I want to give access to be able to work with my daily logs? So it's really more about setting up my permissions inside of this. And you're going to find that for a lot of these. It's one of those things that I mentioned before that's a little bit interesting. The components of BIM 360 build that tends to have a lot of sub pieces. They all are really focusing more on who is able to do this. And then here you go, you can work on that. The components that seem to only have one, relatively basic, like the asset and the cost, those had a lot more nuance to them from a setup standpoint. So again, at the project admin level, what I'm really doing in here is just managing who can come in here and start working with my checklists. And with checklists, you have two components of it. You have a template. So this is sort of like the raw form. I'm going to go in there and be able to add new questions, modify that. And then the checklist itself is who can go in and start filling them out and making new copies of that form. So that's my field management. Up next, I have my project management. This is, again, the RFIs, my submittals, and my daily reports. Sorry, my RFIs, submittals, and meeting minutes. So in here, it's, again, mostly about the permissions, but I also do have one thing I can do. We're talking about the workflow. I have two options right now. I can have a 3-step workflow or a 4-step workflow. So how do I want to organize this? How would I like to go through that process? So I can choose which one of these I want, tell it to apply, and that'll be in there. And then I can come in here and say, okay, well, who is allowed to actually create an RFI? And like everything else inside of BIM 360, I can say that I can do this by the user, I can do this by the company, or I can do this by the role. So in this case, I might say that all my project managers, they can actually do this. Thankfully, I can type that in there. I can also do this by the companies too. So in this case, maybe I'm going to say that Brendan is able to do this, and anybody from Acme and there. So I'm just giving multiple options. I'm saying multiple people can do this. And now I've gone through and set up my RFI workflows. Submittals, same idea. So who is allowed to actually manage the submittals? So I'll say Brendan, and I'll say me. So now when a submittal is going to be created, we can actually go in there and manage this. So again, relatively user-friendly, quick to hop in and get it rolling. So that's my field management, my project management. So what I'm going to look at now is my assets. Now, assets is going to have a little bit more that I can go into. So in this case, I have the different categories. Now, with regards to the categories, and I'll go over this when we go from the project admin into the actual project side of things, I can't manually create new equipment pieces unless there's already a category to assign it to. However, again, when you first start using this, more than likely, you're going to import that list from something like an Excel spreadsheet. In that case, I don't have to worry about setting these up beforehand. It'll bring in those categories. But otherwise, what I can do is I can create different categories here. So if I wanted to make a category of exit signs or air handling units, I can come in here and actually do that. I can choose which status set I want. I'll explain what that means in a second. I can add custom attributes if I want to. So in this case, custom attributes are basically what properties. And when I look to do this, there are 4 or 5 different options of what I want, meaning that do I want this to be text-based? Do I want it to be date? Am I looking for an on-off checkbox? So I can set these up for that. And I can determine whether or not it's a required parameter, like they can't create that piece of equipment unless it includes it, or how I want to manage that. And from a status set, you've got your default status set, but you can also create different ones. And again, when I'm creating the different categories of equipment, I can determine which statuses go with which equipment. So maybe certain pieces are much more straightforward. Is it installed? Has it been inspected? Other ones, maybe I have a whole more, much more complex set of status that I need to track. But this is where I can go through and really organize that and set up how I want to manage my assets. Now, the most complex component of all this is going to be the cost management. There we go. So inside the cost management, you have a lot of different aspects of this. And it's very easy to spend the entire webinar just focusing on this. So I will go a little bit quickly. So inside of here, you got your general information. I can set up my companies, my payment applications, how I want to manage things. Again, there's a lot of information here. You can set up with the income, change orders, your permissions. You know, basically, how do I want to set this entire project up? What's the current activity? Who's made any changes? Turn things on, turn things off. Now, one of the biggest components of this, though, is that when I'm going through this and setting it up, I can create how I want things to be termed. How do I want them to be organized? When I'm looking at the income, I can also set up my document templates. So this gets into, okay, if I have multiple projects, how do I maintain a standard? How do I actually work on these? The really nice thing about this is that when it's looking for a document template, it's actually being literal. It's looking for a template file. So as an example, this is one of the templates that you can actually get from Autodesk as a starting point. When I go to add a template, it gives me the option to download one as a sample. And all of these are parameters. So if you'll notice where it says owner name, owner address, scope of work, all of that is being pulled out of my BIM 360 project to make sure that I don't have to type in all this. I create basically a standard form. I put in my company letterhead, my logo, however I want to organize this. And all of these components here within those brackets, that gets pulled from my project. So it streamlines things and makes it much easier for me as an end user, but also much more consistent across all my projects. So I can bring in all of those templates and organize this as needed, and then get rolling from there. So you've got the multiple services that you can turn on. So we got our assets, field management, cost management, and our project management. So all of those you can turn on from my services. And then once I've been given access to that, I can start going in and confirming that things are set up the way that I want. The majority of these, though, really is on the permission side. So what I'm going to do is actually start going into the services themselves. So let me turn these on. Or not turn on, go into, I should say. Go. Now on the field management side, this is inside of the project now. What I have the ability to do is look at checklists and look at templates. Now the templates are going to be the actual base checklist. So I look at my template and say, yes, that's the checklist I want to do. If I'm doing a punch list, if I'm doing a snag, if I am going out and doing a safety inspection, those would be my templates that I would then start filling in. Now, again, I can bring in a template from the spreadsheet. If I have been using Classic Field and I've got checklists in there that I want to continue to work with, I can bring that in from Classic Field. Now, I'll be doing a little bit of the cake show bit here. So if I hop over to, there you go, field management here, I've got a handful of checklists already created, as I have a handful of templates. These can always be edited. So if I need to come in and make any changes, I can. I can see the different kinds of checklists that I want, questions that I want to ask. You can break these up into different sections. So maybe I want to assign section 1 to one person and section 2 to another person. I have that ability. I can always put in defaults, and I can determine if there are problems and they create an issue, do I want them to be done automatically? Are they certain kinds of issues? So I can actually manage all this pretty easily. And if I look at this and say, okay, well, yeah, I need to actually do a fire extinguisher inspection, I would go to my templates, tell it that I want to create that checklist. And then I have a checklist that I can start filling out. And I can also see when it was scheduled to happen, how many issues have been created from it, and I can also monitor the progress of that checklist. So we'll see a lot more of this next session when we focus on the mobile application, and I'll be going over how we actually conduct the checklist and fill those out from there. Now, in this case, we've got our checklists, our issues, same kind of issues that we were dealing with before from the document management service. So this just allows me to track everything from one location. And then I have my daily logs. Again, most times this is going to be filled in. It's going to be done from the mobile app. But if you're at a computer and a site trailer, I can easily fill this in here too. I can always say get weather. Fills in all this information, but let's say that my site's different from what I expect. I can always go in there and edit that. And modify my labor, sorry. And I can also copy this from a previous if I don't want to sit there and do all the data entry for what's happening today. So this allows me to track and categorize everything that's happened on site. A lot of municipalities require this to be done on a daily basis, and they also require you to have this on hand in case an inspector arrives. This makes sure that I can always go back and review the status. I can always come here and look at this calendar, and whenever a daily report has been set up, I can easily navigate to it and see it. So that's the field management side of things. Now, on the project management side of things, we have our RFIs, submittals, and meetings. Now, the RFIs here, I can easily say I want to create an RFI. If I'm in a drawing, though, so if I'm inside of document management, I can create an RFI in there just like I would an issue. I can say RFI, find the location where I have my question or I need to get more information at, and I put it down like a push pin, just as you would an issue. And this actually gets managed very similar to that. I can add attachments to this. I can link documents. I can actually track things like the cost impact and add other properties and content to this. So it allows me to take advantage of that workflow while still looking at the simplicity and the streamlined tools that are already inside of issues. Then for my submittals, again, I can come over here. I can create new items. I can import them. Submittals have 3 components underneath them. You have your items, you have the packages that they are inside of, and the spec sections that they are assigned to. So if I'm looking at these here, hop over to some submittals. I can see that I have a couple here. One's open, one's closed. Yep. I can see the different packages that they are a component of and the different spec sections that I brought in on this specific project. Now, this might seem like a lot of effort to upload, but again, a lot of this can be streamlined. So when I'm working with this, there's an import standard for this. So if I have a bunch of spec sections that I need to create, I don't want to sit there and do this one at a time. I can actually use my import template and then just upload all my spec sections. If I have a lot of information here that I want to push in, this makes it the easiest way to manage it. So I can take all my spec sections, my data, my submittal type, fill in all this information, then just come over here and say that I want to actually import those. And that's it. And it'll bring in all that content and speed this whole process up. So it makes it a lot easier for me to manage here. Now, the meeting side of things, this is actually really nice because it allows me to do my meeting minutes online. So it's in a central location that everybody can access. I can actually add Zoom meetings right to this to ensure that everybody who's a part of the meeting can easily get into the meeting. That's a relatively new feature. Same thing for the conference link. I can track the different discussions. I can actually go through and see what's going on. And one of the nice things is I can start adding item assignees. So this is item number 1, and I can actually say, you need to fix this. This is your responsibility. I can go through this whole process and manage this. You can create summaries, add components, manage your attachments, and then I can schedule follow-up meetings based off of this. So anything that was still open from this meeting is immediately carried over to the next. So this makes it a lot easier in terms of making sure all of your minutes or notes are in a central location for the people that are a part of your project, and also helps manage all the tracking. So if I'm doing my meeting minutes in Word or Excel and I want to start assigning those roles, I might have had to go in here and then start creating issues and doing the data entry. This allows me to keep everything in one location. Now, from there, you've got your assets component. Now, the assets component in here, again, it's relatively new. We had the setup that we can do inside of the project admin where we're creating our different categories. And once we've actually brought in information here, I can go through and see the different kinds of elements. By clicking on the different kinds of air handling units, it filters it down. I can see what their status is, and I can bring these up. So when I'm looking at the different kinds of, or different pieces of equipment, I can see all the details that might be in there. You'll notice one of these is actually barcode. Again, if you're using the iOS app so far, the Android one will get this soon, but the iOS app does have the ability to scan in barcodes and bring you to this data. I can track any issues that are assigned to this piece. If I've created checklists and I've assigned checklists, whether they're inspection or review or fit out, I can assign my checklists to this. And if there's attachments, whether it's PDFs for inspections, maintenance, installation, photos from the site, I can have those all attached to that so that they follow that piece of equipment. And again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A window. I'm keeping an eye on that just in case anything comes in as I'm going through. So this is our assets tool. And again, I have the ability to export this out as a report, but I can also import content into this too. So if there are certain things that I want to bring in here and I don't want to do it one at a time, more often than not, you're already going to have a spreadsheet of your equipment that you want to track, at least to start from. And they give you a nice example here. There's a couple of pieces of information there to show you how the data is managed. And it shows you a lot of the content here. Now, if you've created custom parameters, you actually can fill that data in here as well. Essentially what you'll do is you'll come over here, tell it that you want to export, and then I can fill in that data into the custom parameters, and then I can import that all there. So a nice little feature that you just have to know that you can do. And then from there, you have your cost management. Then I can start going in and doing the same exact thing. I can import my data here. I can look at my main contract and set this up and start pulling in that information. And then I can always export this too. So a lot of aspects inside of the cost management for tracking your change orders, your budget, your paid items, and with using different tools. So like the Autodesk Construction Cloud Connect, I can actually connect or integrate this with other tools for financial information. So you can really get the full breadth of the workflow that way. So a lot of different tools and components inside of this. So you have the ability to manage and administer the project a little bit from the project admin, as expected. Some of the templating that you're going to be working with, though, is going to be brought in during the actual project usage, so inside of the project. So those are the ones where I'm uploading my templates or uploading the content from there. Now, in addition to that, though, there are tools that I can do that give me more information on my project. So if I go into the insight component of my project, so kind of like the dashboard, but more focused, I'm able to look and see, okay, well, what's happening from my risk? This project is brand new for the most part, doesn't really have anything in it. So I'm looking at it and there's no risk, but it's showing me what's happening for my contractors, my checklist activity. I can then focus on the different aspects of my project. things like design, cost, schedule. Once I'm working on a project that has more data, all this will be filled in. And I also have the ability to check my reports. Now, the reports component of this allows me to actually create reports and schedule them as well. So when I say I want to create a report, I can choose what kind of report from a couple of options. So let's say I'm doing my issue details. I can then say, okay, well, when do I want these to occur? Do I want it right now? How do I want that to be exported as? So what formats do I want? How do I want to set these out? Once I've set this up and say maybe I want this to happen every week, it's done. Set it, forget it, walk away, and then I know I'm going to be getting this in an email every week. So there's different methods of going through this, but at the moment, your options for creating your reports are right here. And as time goes on, this is going to get a little, it's going to get more powerful and probably will get a little bit more similar to what the classic field had in terms of all the different kinds of templates and functions. Now, all of that is inside of the project management. If what I'm looking at though is, well, I probably have too many tabs. If I'm looking at this at the account level, there are some things I can do there as well. So right now I'm looking at this from the account admin. And having to sign back in. And I'm on my members page. And the reason I'm there is because BIM 360 Build comes with a different user type that you can take advantage of. So if I go to add, one of the things that I can do is add an executive. Now, an executive is a different user type, and that gets me access to a completely new feature. So I shouldn't say new here, completely different feature from before. Everything that I do inside of BIM 360 typically is focused on the project or the overall account, but there's not a lot of ways for me to see everything that's happening across all projects. That's where the account admin level insight comes in, and that's something that I can grant to an executive. So when I do this, I can come in and start looking at that same kind of information that I saw before at the project level for insight, but now I'm able to see this wholesale. I'm getting a look at all the active projects on the specific hub that I'm currently on. I can see the risk level of those projects based on the issues and checklists and things that are happening. I also can see push pins of all the different locations across the world that my projects are being built in. Based on the color of those push pins, that lets me know exactly what the status is of that. And I can click on those and get more information on that as well. This is all using the Construction IQ machine learning algorithms that Autodesk has been developing with many different customers. And I can go here and filter this down by the different business units or project types. Now, the ability to look at this from the different design, quality, and safety standpoints is similar to what I would get from the excuse me, from the project-based portion of the insight. One of the features that's specific to here, though, is the data component. When I look at the data component, this is where I can generate an export that I can then bring into something like Power BI. So if what I'm looking to do is get more of a business dashboard for all the data that's going on, how are we doing with regards to use of BIM 360? How many people are logging in? How many checklists are being filled out? What's going on with our issues? This allows me to take all that data that's being collected in BIM 360 across the different projects and then start using it in different ways. I can use this to interrogate my work and ensure that we're getting the most out of the service. And these are just some of the examples of what you can do with the different data that comes from that connector. Now, at the moment, this is on demand, meaning that when I want to run this, I actually come over here and tell it to run, and then I can access that data for 30 days. The next time I want to update that, so if I'm looking for new data every week, I just come to the site, tell it to run it, and I do that once a week. Now, Insight is an account admin level tool. There's one other aspect of this that's also at the account admin level, and that's our field management here. Now, the field management at the account level is where I can create templates and templates for checklists. But rather than doing them in the project, this allows me to do them overall. So if I'm trying to create a standard checklist for reviews, this is where I can do that. So I can create new templates. I can then import new templates from here as well. same as I would locally. But the really nice thing is I can then publish this. So let's say I've got my checklist. I can then say publish, and now I have a list of projects. So I can take this I can take this checklist and then push it out into whatever projects that I want. And you notice that this is already inside of one of them. I can also then update that. So in the classic field, if I had a checklist, I can easily add that to any project that I wanted, but I couldn't push it to multiple ones. And if there was a change, I'd have to go back into each project on its own and make that change. This allows me to much more easily manage all the checklists for an entire company in one location. I don't have to bounce around. I can go back to the account level, make the changes that I need to, and push those out to any new projects or existing projects that need the updated work. So it makes it a lot easier for me to do all of my account management and administration. All right. Now, I know I bounced around a little bit between the different components. Again, BIM 360 Build has a lot of different pieces to it. In terms of when we do training, it's probably the most complex one just because it really varies based on your role. So when we typically talk about BIM 360 design, most of the designers are in the training with the admins so that everybody understands how to use it and goes through all that process. With BIM 360 Build, most of the training tends to be very focused based on the role. So if you're out in the field doing inspections, it's more focused on this is how you use the tools, this is how you get your reports, this is how you use the mobile device. So while there's a lot here, again, based on your role, you're not really going to need to know every little thing. You're going to be focused on the component that you work with. So if it seemed a little bit scary or complex, don't worry, it really isn't. So any questions? Okay. And one question, is it possible to use the data connector to run automatic? Out of the box, no. And there is a service from Autodesk now called the Autodesk Construction Cloud Connect. That's using a backend called Workato. And essentially it works as a scripting service, but you can do this without needing to know how to program. So kind of like an if this, then that. And that allows me to create rules and workflows. So you can use something like that to automate the process without needing to know how to code or create custom content. Another question, no, Workato does not currently, or sorry, the Construction Cloud Connect does not come with BIM 360 Build. It is a add-on service that you can use for BIM 360 in general. It's relatively new and it allows me to work with a lot of different components. If I wanted to add DocuSign to things, for example, or if I wanted to connect PlanGrid to BIM 360 docs, or to Assemble, or to anything else along those lines, including a lot of other third-party tools like SharePoint or Dropbox or whatever, I can use it for those kind of things. You're making connections between different tools and workflows without needing to create custom code. But that is an additional service or a cost. Okay. I'll keep an eye on the questions while I just go over the next little bit. So this was session 5 where we went over the build platform. This session, as Jacinia mentioned before, will be is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube page shortly. The next 2 sessions are going to be focused on going mobile and for operations. That's going to be the 16th of July and the 30th of July. And some upcoming events that we have. So there's the Festival of BIM and Digital Construction going on that Microdesk is actually a part of. So we have a panel focusing on supply chain influences. That's going to be on the 6th of July at 3 p.m. And then the next session of this is going to be, again, the 16th of July, where we focus on the mobile app. And I'll be actually showing an Android as well as iOS side by side, so you can see how those two are both different and the same. So the nice thing is tools are very consistent, but you don't always get the new features at the same time. So we'll go over what those differences are and how they actually work. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions, if you have suggestions for future webinars or information that we put out, please let us know. We really do want to make sure that we're giving you information that's useful for you. But otherwise, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the week. Cheers.